Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm so excited for you to hear this next interview. I have Chrystal Rose virtually in front of me, and she's going to talk all about self-love. She's the host of the podcast Self-Love for Breakfast. I was fortunate to be a guest on that podcast. I've listened to some episodes; they're amazing. So if you're looking to set your intention for 2021 for self-care, self-love, all things involved in that, which we're going to talk about in this episode, I definitely recommend her podcast and following her on social, which we'll let you know all of that info towards the end. But without further ado, Chrystal, welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so excited. So the first question I always ask my guests is to introduce themselves by sharing who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
So, my name is Chrystal Rose, and I do a lot. I'm an entrepreneur. I own an online boutique for women with athletic bodies. I have been nutrition coaching for a long time, and I just sort of rebranded that, hired coaches, and now I am self-love coach, and I get to help women step into their best selves, which is incredible. And of course, I have the Self-Love Breakfast Club podcast, and I'm an author, all this stuff. So lots of things.
That's awesome. So what made you get into all of that?
I think it was really more of like not really super intentional. It was more of like a next step, or a door opens and I'm the kind of person who just kind of like walks in, because I started in marketing. I just wanted to own a marketing company for the longest time.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that was my first business, and it kind of I had the rug pulled out from under me from my partners, and then I stumbled into an online women's magazine, self-empowerment, and that's how I found my love for empowering women and, helping. And it just kind of went on from there, and I got into fitness and had like a dressing room meltdown. So I was like, someone needs to fix fashion for women with athletic bodies. I'll do it. So it just kind of, passion kind of led me to the next thing.
I love that. That's so amazing. So I'm curious, like when you say women with athletic builds, like how is your clothing different than like what you would find in, I don't know, where Nike, or I don't know, does that count? I don't know.
Nike.
Or like
Well, Nike.
Marshalls. I'm like, Nike is that's like for athletic, but like what's the difference?
So really, when we first started, I had this like vision of made to measure clothes. It was like, you put in your measurements, we create a piece based on that. And then when I realized that there was no way, there was no way I could do that cost effectively. I just it took me a year and a half to launch because I just couldn't figure it out. Then we moved to, you give me your measurements, we'll tailor these pieces to fit, that we bought wholesale. And that, again, it was really difficult in terms of like no impulse shoppers, and even, the right fit, because we may have the same exact waist measurement, but you might like something a little looser and I might like it a little tighter. So we changed our business model again. And really, it came down to me being a really good buyer and just like touch and feel and stretchiness, but structured, and just cuts. And so there are a lot of really cookie cutter pieces out there. If you go into just a department store, regular store, which is what happened to me, was I tried on clothes for 2 hours and everything just didn't quite fit perfectly. It was gapey in the waist or tight on my butt and legs. And so I look for that when I buy things. And that's really, and I'm moving into more of like, not so much just that athletic muscular woman, but women who just struggle to find a really great fit. And we know that we can deliver that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Because I think do you feel like when you wear clothes that you fit in, if you feel better?
Oh, yeah.
Like, is that part of what drove you to decide to do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I finally, for the first time in my life, was in a dressing room and I felt really good about myself. And so then when I put on all these clothes, I'm like, so you're telling me that I went through all of this and I have worked so hard and I actually really love my body, that I can't even find clothes that will fit it?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, well, because most people, I think, when they go into a dressing room and the clothes don't fit, they somehow automatically blame themselves.
Yeah,
It's like,
which
no,
I always had.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is just insane, right? There's
Yeah.
just everybody makes clothes differently, and that's just not the case. Like you don't have to change your body at all. You could just find better clothes that fit you, and luckily you've created them. So thank you for
Exactly.
that. So let's switch topics to more so like the self-love. So I feel like the term self-love gets thrown around a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So can you tell us what your definition of self-love is?
Yeah. So self love to me is there's no try in it. And I feel like there's a lot of I'm trying to love myself and there's no try.
Mm,
It's the love that you have for a spouse or a significant other or a child or just someone that you just love. You don't try to love someone.
mm,
It's just you just do. And that's kind of like what I believe self-love is. It's yes, you have to cultivate it because we are taught not to. We have all of these layers and wounds that we have to work through in order to get to a place where that comes naturally for us. And I have my own ways that I figured that out.
mhm.
But yeah, it's a natural thing. It's not there's no try in it. It's just that
So
flowing love from you to you.
yeah, so okay, but let's talk about when someone maybe doesn't feel that way, right?
Yeah.
And they feel so distant from even knowing how to cultivate it. Like, where does
Yeah.
someone begin?
So one of the things I've been writing about self-love, I think for more than 2 years now, just specifically that every single week I send out an email. And there was a lot of try there. And there was a lot of like, this is what I'm going through. And what I realized is that when we sit here and we look at past versions of ourselves, when we look at ourselves as a small child, and when that moment of we reached to have our needs met and then they weren't met, and we had to go
Mm,
find another strategy to meet our needs. And if it was attention, we wanted love and we didn't get it. Maybe we threw a fit. Maybe we hid so someone would search for us. Maybe we went and we got it from boys at school or whatever. We started to find that externally because our needs weren't getting met. So I think about that young girl. For me, I was probably like 5 when I had a really traumatic childhood. So I think about that little 5-year-old and how could I not have love for her? How could
mm,
I not? And so I start there. I start by having love for those past versions of me. And then as I get through other time periods of my life where I was not the best person.
probably responding to your trauma,
Yeah, not the
right?
best person. I look at that girl and I'm like, you know what? She was doing the best she could. She wasn't a bad person. She was struggling, and I
Yeah.
have to have compassion for her. And then I think about even my future self. Would she look back at me with love? Absolutely. So I kind of start there. It's more of like a timeline sort of thing rather than like staring in the mirror and being like, I love myself. I love myself. And like
Mm.
trying to make me love myself now.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of you have to be like understanding and
Hmm.
exploratory and compassionate
So
rather than
compassionate.
so hard on yourself,
Yes. Yeah, it's
right?
all
Like,
about compassion.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
all about that.
So would you say part of it is also how you treat yourself or maybe how you let others treat you? Does that come into play? Can you give
Yeah.
maybe some examples like how that would play out, what that
Yes.
would look like?
Yeah, and it comes in layers, like I said, like for me, I may not have been the most loving person to myself in certain ways, but I there was a point in relationships where I had just gone through this really toxic, horrible, horrible controlling relationship and somewhat abusive physically.
I'm sorry.
And I had to create boundaries because I knew I did not deserve to be treated that way. I knew
Mm,
it, even though I believed I did when I was with him. When it was over, I just had to realize that, you know what, there are good men out there. And maybe part of me allowed this in because I was looking for something outside of myself.
mm,
And I need to have boundaries. And if someone's going to treat me in a way that makes me feel bad, whether or not it's coming from me or I allowed it or whatever, I don't need it in my life and I don't want it in my life and I don't
mhm.
have to have it. So I think even just starting with just a little boundary, but yes, the way other people treat you and your allowance of it is definitely a reflection of how you feel about yourself.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm sorry that that happened to you. I appreciate you sharing because like that's really a tough situation to be in, and I'm glad that you're out of it, and you got out of it. And
Yeah.
I think by you sharing it, I think other people, I hope whoever's listening, I know there's definitely at least one person who unfortunately is in a very similar circumstance.
Yeah.
So when you said when you were in it, you almost believed that you deserved to be treated that way,
Yeah.
right? which is
Yeah.
which is so that's so sad, and it's
It's
so but
so sad.
it's so common,
Yeah.
right? So like how did you pull yourself out of that? Like, so you mentioned like setting boundaries, but like what did it take for you to like even to have that awareness,
Mm.
like, or to just like just to slowly get out, because it's everything is just so much easier to see
Right.
afterwards. Like hindsight is 2020, right? Like it's just so much easier afterwards. But like I really want, like, what I teach with my clients with their nutrition is just a metaphor for life. It's like pay attention, be
Mm.
aware, and use that to guide you. And if you're doing that with your food, I hope you're also doing that in your life as well, right?
Yeah.
And but it's hard. It's really hard. So yeah, what tips do you have for someone who might be in it right now?
So I think one is like recognizing it, because what where I was at was I had gotten out of a really long-term relationship where I was not exactly, like I said, the best person.
Mhm.
And when I met this guy, I thought he was my new beginning. This is the person that can help me change,
Mm,
and I can be really amazing to him, and I will have, I'll have that. And it felt amazing in the beginning. And people who are trying to control you don't just start off and be like, you can't wear that or you can't do this. They
mm,
start with little asks, little like,
mhm,
hey, would you mind? And of course, because you want to please them, and everything is really high vibing. And then over time, they start to kind of like dismantle your self worth and self esteem. And so before you know it, you believe that the destruction of the relationship is your fault
mm,
because they tell you, well, if you just would, do what I told you to do, or if you just acted right, or you weren't so stupid, then we wouldn't be here right now. I would be
mm,
that guy. But they never were that guy. And so I
mhm,
think for me, I'm really, really self aware, um, cursed with self-awareness. And
mhm,
I think at some point in that, it was about a year and a half long, that I just realized this is not going to change. He is not going to change. And I knew I needed to get out, and I definitely did some like back and forth, but he ended up breaking up with me, which was, I was so lucky that that happened.
mhm.
But I got as far away as humanly possible. I literally packed up my stuff and moved across the country to get as far
Wow.
away from him because I knew he was going to come back and try to reel me back in, and I would be too
Mhm.
weak to say no.
Wow. So that's a powerful tip. I think your environment matters, distance matters, time
Support,
matters,
yeah.
support. Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure you did some more like inner work on yourself i- in the interim of those
Yeah.
things to really
Yeah.
recognize like, wow, I did not deserve that. Can't
Mm-mm.
settle for
No.
that.
Yeah, and I just knew, like I said, I knew he would come knocking on my door in 2 weeks if I just moved out and moved nearby, and
Mhm.
I wouldn't have had that internal strength. And I knew if I was going to have a happier life and rebuild like myself as a person, I needed to get as far away and not let it be an option, not an
Mhm.
easy option. I had to
Mhm.
go.
Yeah, like a definite no. Like a hell no, not a
Yes.
maybe, not where maybe we'll repair,
Slam the
maybe we'll get
door.
back to, yeah, no, this
Yeah.
is done. That's my past. Like moving on.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
So now I'm curious just to tie this back into like nutrition and body image, which
Mm.
is why people are often most often listening to this podcast. Like
Yeah.
I think when people think of self-love, they do think of their body image. And so I'm curious whether it was you personally or clients that you've worked with, if you ever identified that like part of what they believe they deserved was based off of where their body was, like what their body looked like, you know?
Um,
And like I'm wondering if you have any tips for someone who maybe struggles with their body image or um finds themselves like they're not ready to date because they don't look a certain way or feel a certain way. Like how do you kind of help someone through that?
That's actually something I've heard a lot, that, it's going to be easier for me to find someone who will love me if I look a certain way, societally. Um, I have definitely, like, even in that relationship, there was like, do I need to lose weight? Do I need to gain weight? Like, how will I be more attractive to you? It was like, what do I need to do for you?
Mm,
And so it was very external. And it's it's so hard because we do search for that external validation, and the hard thing is that when we have stuff going on in our own emotional realm, in our mental realm, right? We reflect it onto our physical self. And so we could look in the mirror and look what society deems acceptable or beautiful and
Mhm.
not see it.
Mhm.
When I first started getting into like real fitness, I looked in the mirror and I was like, gross, look at my legs, gross. And I went and I thought in order to prep myself or get a head start, I would get cool sculpting done on my legs. And I got it done and it ended up ruining them. Like literally had permanent indentations in
Oh
my
no.
thighs
Uh,
from this procedure that I felt like I needed to have. And when I looked back at the before picture that they took, I was so crushed by it because they were beautiful. My thighs were beautiful. And I could see
mm,
that where I
mhm.
was now. And I'm like, wow, I had to like physically almost like basically deform myself in
Mhm.
order to realize like how perfect I truly was. And I don't mean perfect like again like society, but like my body was beautiful and there was nothing wrong with it. And I think so
Mhm.
often we just really believe that if we just keep tweaking and keep working on our exterior, that our interior will feel better. And it just
Amazing.
won't. It
No.
has to start from within.
Yeah. Oh my God. There were so many nuggets there. There were so many good, like the very first thing when you were said that, like when we're struggling emotionally,
Mm,
we put that on our bodies. We don't see, when we're stressed out, when we're anxious, when we're angry, when we're frustrated, we see negative
mm,
and we have no place to put it. So we put it on our body. We feel like we need to change
yes.
everything about us. And really, that like it has nothing to do with what we look like.
No. No.
Wow.
How many times have we said like, "Oh, if I just lost X pounds or fit into X size or whatever, I'd be happy." You won't be
Mhm.
happy. There are people running around with abs and flat stomachs and perfection, so we
Quote
think, that are
unquote. Yeah.
miserable.
Yeah. I have this vision. It'll probably be posted but by the time this episode comes out. It's my next like one time I did this one post where I put you don't have to look fit to be fit and I put it like on a poster board and I was like out in the street and like it went viral because it
That's
was
awesome.
just like people really loved it. So my next one, I'll let you know. It'll be out before this episode comes out. Don't steal it. I know it's okay. But it's like I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm just gonna write happiness is not a body size. Like it's just
Yeah.
not a body size. Happiness is not a body size. Like we people really need to get that out of their belief system.
Yeah.
Right? It's the
Yeah.
actions, it's how we feel about ourselves. It's, just accepting ourselves. A lot of it, like you said, it's not even so much doing anything. It's just being okay with where you're at. Because if you're
Yeah.
okay with where you're at, then things will come to you. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to look outside. Like you said, I love that. That if you keep looking externally, there's something there that's like something's off,
That
right?
search will never end. It'll
Yeah.
never end if you keep looking
Mhm.
out here,
Mhm.
because it's always not going to be good enough.
Oh, man. All right, so let's talk more like habits.
Mm.
Like, are there any particular maybe habits that you incorporate or you have your clients incorporate that can help to cultivate that self-love?
So, I mean, I love working out now. I hated it before, and I used to think it just meant like running on a treadmill, and so I was like not about that life. So I
Well, and
kept
you
going.
were you doing it probably it sounds like you may have been doing it to try to like look a certain
Yeah.
way too. You weren't
Yes.
doing it to like feel good
Right.
or to like yeah,
No,
totally.
it was like, oh, I guess I gotta go on a diet again, which means I need to go and run endlessly on a treadmill.
Mhm. Yeah, no.
And that's what I thought fitness was. But when I started lifting and I felt really strong, I was like, this is awesome. But I think that moving your body is not just for how you look, but how you feel. And it doesn't matter. I tell my clients all the time, like, look, you're going to stick to what you enjoy doing. So if that is turning on music and dancing your ass off in your kitchen, like, do that.
Mhm.
If it's
Mhm.
boxing or CrossFit or Peloton, whatever, do that because if you enjoy it, it's not going to feel like, I have to go work out. And then that, I have to go work out has to do, you relate it to how you look and not how you feel. And
Mm,
so for me, a daily habit, well, I don't work out every single day. I think we need rest.
yeah.
Um,
Thank you for saying that.
yeah, we need rest.
Yeah.
I will scream that from the mountaintops. But a daily habit is, making sure I'm moving my body in whatever way that feels good. And if I'm on a program, cool. And if I'm doing something else, great. Like, it needs to be done. I think getting sleep, and this is coming from a person who used to wear insomnia like a badge of honor. I thought it was so cool that I couldn't sleep and that I struggled and that I worked instead. And I'm such a workaholic. Look at me, I'm great. But like, no, you're sitting here taking years off your life. So I've personally worked really hard through like supplementation and trying to limit screen time and just trying to do all these things to, because it's a battle for me. It's harder for me than like the average person, to get that sleep. So sleeping, and I spend a disgusting amount of money on supplements, on vitamins, because we don't get a lot of things like magnesium in our diets. You know, even our soil is depleted no matter how many vegetables you eat. So I get my magnesium, I get D plus K. I, take adaptogens and nootropics. And so I want to make sure that I feel really good. And so, yeah, vitamins, sleep, and moving my body. And of course, not eating crap all the time, but,
Well,
I
I was
do
gonna say
integrate a little bit of
I probably would say like the balanced diet would be the first part before we did the
yeah. But
supplements and all that stuff. But either way, I think it's those are key. Those are
yeah.
really, really critical. And I don't think so. That's a really good point because I don't think people think when they think self care, I
Mm,
think they think of bubble baths, which
yeah.
is great. Manicure, pedicures, hair. You're getting your hair done, getting your nails done, getting which goes back to your original point. Like, although that can feel good, and for some people that
Yes.
is relaxing, that is very much external stuff, right? How are you fixing the internal, right?
Mhm.
So, the what you eat is changing your microbiome in your gut. How you exercise is changing like your body composition, but more
Mhm.
importantly, your energy, right? Your
Mhm.
feelings about yourself. How you sleep is going to impact your focus and how you're able to, like, do all the things that you want to do. Like, so I think that that's a really good point because I think, yeah, most people when they think of self-care, I had a client say that to me the other day, and he's like, he didn't realize that, like, when we were talking about, like, a lot of people think like meal prep is like this very rigid way of, like, it
Mm.
has to be in like
Eating
perfect.
out of containers.
Yeah, like, exactly, but I was like, "No," like, but it is an act of self-care when you just intentionally set a couple hours or a couple of days out of the week to make sure that healthy food is prepared so you have it to
Yeah.
grab and go in your fridge. So that way when you're stressed out, you don't go to, like, the easy stuff that usually often you binge on, right? So,
Right.
like, even that he was surprised to hear was considered an act of self-care.
Yeah. That's
And
actually the name of my book is I Won't Tell You to Take a Bubble Bath.
I love that. That's amazing. That's amazing. You're in the process of writing it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You
It
know when you're gonna launch it?
should be out this year.
I know, I'm the same way. It's a lot longer. It
Oh,
takes a lot longer than you think,
it
but it's gonna
does.
be but yours is gonna be great, and I know, like, it's just
Yes.
sometimes, like, masterpieces, and not that it's gonna be a masterpiece, but I mean, mine, yours probably will be, but, like, I'm just saying, like,
So
if
funny.
masterpieces, they take time,
They
okay?
take time.
Like, if you want it to be good.
Especially when you have so much other stuff going on. It's
Yeah,
hard. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Is it your first one?
No, I've actually, so I wrote kind of a somewhat of a racy, I call it racy, but memoir. And I also co-wrote a children's book, weirdly enough, on the microbiome.
No way, that is
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. So this
That's
would be
really
like my
cool.
third book, but it they're so different. Like the genres are so different that it's
Yeah.
definitely it's a standalone for sure.
That's cool. That's exciting. That's
Yeah.
really, really
But
awesome.
if you did
Well,
read the first one, you could be like, wow, how far you've come.
well, for most people, the concept is like just get your first book done as if there's going to be more. My mindset is this is the only book I'm ever writing. This better be a damn good one. Like, so,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
for me, it's taking a lot longer. We'll see. I told like everybody that I love, even my therapist, I'm like, if I ever tell you I'm going to write a book again, please tell me not to.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
the
don't
answer is
worry.
no, no, not doing it. Like,
It's a lot.
it's a lot. It's a big responsibility. But it'll impact a lot of people's lives, and that's why we're doing it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
amazing. Okay, is there anything else we didn't talk about that you feel like we should discuss in
Oh my
regards to
goodness.
self-love, self-care? Yeah, taking care of
I
you.
feel like we covered a lot. I do want to speak though to so the woman that I am currently working with now is the woman who is a high achiever. She's a leader. And I think, for me personally, I went from seeking external attention and validation from men, from relationships, and
Mm,
then I moved into work. And
mm,
when you're a high achieving woman and you go to work and that's your life and you love working, so you're like, I'm not hurting anyone, by doing this. Like where I beforehand I was hurting people by
Mhm.
my behavior. So I kind of want to just speak to that woman because I think there's so much unworthiness that comes up when you're a high achieving woman and you haven't like done the inner work. And I just want to say to her that do not take your losses or your failures personally.
Mm.
They are mistakes or they are failures. We learn from them, we move on. And if you're going to take them personally, then you better be celebrating those wins,
Mhm.
even the little ones. And you
Mhm.
should be celebrating wins no matter what. So often I would hit a goal, whether it be physically with my body or with work or whatever, and it would just be on to the next. It was never good enough. Or I would let this
Yeah.
fear that I can't do it again, or
Mhm.
it won't, I can't sustain this overtake me instead of basking in my accomplishments and being
Mhm.
proud of myself.
Mm.
So I just wanted to put that out there because that felt like
That's a huge
it.
one. I promise you 97% of the people listening to this resonated with that. I work
Yeah.
with a lot of high achieving women. I know a lot of
Yeah.
high achieving women listen to this. Yeah, totally. 100%. And
Heal that.
yeah, feel that. Well, because it's so easy for us to be hard on ourselves, but
Oh
yet it's
yeah.
so also so hard for us to be like good to ourselves. Like, why is that? We gotta
It's awful.
yeah. Like if you're
Yeah.
gonna be a brat to you, be really nice to you when you deserve it too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
good point. Yeah.
Yeah. At the
Totally.
very least, but you should, we would
Well,
like to eliminate
we would
that and then just do the celebrating thing.
yeah. That would be yeah. Compassion, right? Come back to
Yeah.
compassion. Oh my god. This is such a good episode. I'm so excited for people to hear it. I like literally cannot wait.
Yay.
So let's tell people where they can find you, connect with you, message you, work with you, order your clothes, all the above.
Yeah, so you can find me. Probably the most common place is on Instagram. It's at Xtal Rose, Xtalrose, which is the same thing on TikTok, and then Rebellia Clothing on Instagram, and the same thing on TikTok if you're a TikToker. And then you can always find me on Facebook, just Chrystal Rose, and my name is spelled with a Chrystal,
Awesome.
and then
Thank you.
crystalrose.com.
Okay, so I'll put your
Yeah,
Instagram and your website
perfect.
on the in the show notes. I don't think I'm following on Instagram. So, I mean on TikTok. So I got to
Oh,
follow you on
oh,
TikTok.
I just
Yeah.
started my personal one, so that one's new, but the Rebellia clothing one has been around. I just haven't been
It's fun.
consistent until now.
It's yeah, it's hard, to manage all these
So many
platforms and
things.
whatnot. So many
Yeah.
things. But anyways, this has been so great. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
listening, guys. Definitely give her a follow. Screenshot this episode, share it on your story, and tag me, tag Chrystal. Thank you for listening. As always, this is Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.